When that all changed, the stress eating went away, and then she ended up losing, I think, like 30 pounds over the next 6 months or so. With no willpower, no diets, she just wasn't, quote, sabotaging her weight loss because emotional needs changed. Part of the problem is people downplay or disregard the potential importance of these childhood experiences. A client was referred to me by a doctor, and she presented with being overweight. Maybe she was 60 pounds overweight or so, and her patent, I think, she was 50 or 60 at the time, been married for a long time, had a challenging marriage. She was constantly triggered by her husband, stress-wise, and then she would go and eat, wine, cheese, and crackers and all of this. And this would happen almost every day. She came to me for help with weight loss. Now, I learned early in my career as a hypnotist, if I didn't get the message as an ex-nutritionist, overeating, in this case, emotional or stress eating, is a symptom of the emotions. Something was triggering her. She thought it was her husband, but that might have just been a reminder of something. We actually did, I think, a session or so or two on just eating habits, basic hypnosis for that. Often that works. In her case, it didn't work very well. And so then I think it was the third time I saw her. I was going to just see her, I think, 6 or 7 times. And okay, so what I did is I said, okay, well, let's focus on that feeling that you get right before you start stress eating. And the memory that came up for her was one time in particular where, for the first time, she perceived as a child that her dad didn't love her. That her dad favored her 4 brothers or whatever it was. So she had since learned as an adult that her dad did love her. He just had a different way of showing it and all of this sort of stuff, the generational maybe, and he wasn't very affectionate. Even though she knew this logically and had known it for half of her life, her adult life, she still felt this hole, which she could fill with cheese and crackers and wine or whatever the food was. And obviously that led to her being overweight. And so I said, well, we need to just on the fly, because I didn't know this ahead of time. She didn't come to me saying, this is the cause of my problem. But it was her perception, even if it was inaccurate. This is the important thing. Our memories are not accurate. Usually they're inaccurate, even slightly. And every time we access the memory consciously or unintentionally, it can change slightly. And this is memory reconsolidation, as it naturally happens. It's a form of neuroplasticity. So the brain is remodeling itself around use. And if you access a thought, a memory, you're using that, that neuronal connection, you're using that pathway. And so just like a very delicate flower, every time you touch it, it can be affected by how you touch it. Well, I use that approach, take advantage of that ability in the brain, but do it intentionally and directed to direct the mind or the brain. I use the word mind to change the way it represents that thought. So she remembered that time when she was a child, and it was just one of a few memories. She started crying. I sort of improvised some kind of scenario where I was able to help reframe her relationship with that experience, her dad's motives, his intentions, his behavior, and so on. And basically took her through her life after that moment quickly up to the present day. And she just kept saying, wow, that was big. That was big. She was crying, but it wasn't pain. Initially it was pain, but then it was relief. And I said, what's going on? Because I was leading her through a scenario, but I didn't see what was going on in her head. And she said, I now feel like for the first time in my life that my dad loved me. I feel his love. He was dead. He had been dead for at least 10 years, maybe 20 years. So she couldn't get closure or rely on her dad to say, I love you. She felt it. Now, was that accurate? Was it not? I don't care. I mean, let's be real. It may not have been accurate that he didn't love her. she learned later on he did, but she felt the love was missing. So she grew up with the belief, my dad never loved me. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not as good as my brothers. And her husband, for whatever reason, triggered that. When the memory changed, when the hole in her heart was filled with my dad's love, which, by the way, there's no way in hell you can do this through willpower or analysis. You just can't. I mean, she had been through, therapy. She had tried diets to no avail. Immediately, her stress eating stopped. She even told me her husband started behaving better. I think that was just her perception. She wasn't being triggered, but she didn't have the need, I need in quotes, to drink the wine, to eat the cheese and crackers, to fill the bottomless pit inside of her because it was filled with love. So she may have had an adverse childhood experience that was not one event, but was just the absence of love, affirmation, support, whatever. And it was all her perception. When that changed, Jim, the stress went away, the self-worth improved. I mean, we had to work on each of these things, but right away, she wasn't hitting overwhelm. The allostatic load, the cup of water was not overflowing constantly. We drained the swamp, so to speak. I'm mixing all these metaphors, but basically she was not overwhelmed anymore. Most of that overwhelm was caused by the inside, not by the husband. So it's not because of the external circumstances, but her perception of those events and how it relates to her and her worldview and her relationship with herself and others. When that all changed through a few sessions, but mostly that one session, we had uprooted the weed, the stress eating went away, and then she ended up losing, I think, like 30 pounds over the next 6 months or so. With no willpower, no diets, she just wasn't, quote, sabotaging her weight loss by tending to her emotional needs, because emotional needs changed.